I'm Tondalyn Atkinson Weaver, and I am very excited to present our topic today, which is how to properly use gestures while presenting. I'd like to take a moment, though, before we get started, and read you the Dash poem by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at a funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates of her tombstone. From beginning to the end, he noted that first came the date of her birth and spoke, following that with tears. But he said, let's see, what mattered most was the dash, I don't know, between the years. Listen, you get the idea. That will not win Presenter of the Year award. What it lacked was voice intonation, focus, gestures, and I'm fooling around with a flip chart pen. So let's go over how you can be effective using gestures in your presentation. There are 4 questions that I'd like to address today. The first is, what is a gesture? Why are gestures important? Who do you have to be to use gestures successfully in your presentation? And how do you properly use gestures? So first, let's address the question, what is a gesture? A gesture is a visual, nonverbal method of presenting a message. Now, a gesture can either be used alone or in conjunction with the words that you speak. A gesture can encompass facial expressions, hand movements, and body stance. Second question is, why are gestures important? Now, gestures are important because it helps to enhance the audience's ability to remember and to understand what the message is that you're trying to present. Do you know that the nonverbal communication from your body conveys a tremendous amount of information to your audience? In fact, there is a statistic that says 55% of all the messages that an audience receives comes from your nonverbal communication. 38% comes from the tone of your voice, and 7% comes from the actual words themselves. So you can see why gestures are a very important part of your presentation. In fact, it's almost like a 1-2 punch. Whether they get it, your audience gets the information from your verbal presentation or the nonverbal presentation, either way, they are receiving your message. So we've talked about what a gesture is and why gestures are important. Now, who do you have to be in order to have your gestures be successful in your presentation? Well, here's the rule of thumb as I see it. Who are you when you are naturally speaking in a conversation with your friend, with your family member, or a coworker? If you can be aware of the gestures and the intonations that you use, then that is the very best of what you bring to the presentation platform. Now, for some, they may be very animated and would like to use a lot of gestures. And for others, their conversation might be quite reserved and not a lot of animation at all. But whoever it is that you are, whether you're greatly animated or not animated at all, bring the best of you to the presentation platform. How do you properly use gestures? Well, there are several parts to the gesturing mechanism. It can include the facial expressions, the body, and hand gestures. So let's go back to the facial expression and start with the eyes. The eyes, as they say, are the windows to the soul. So your eyes can be very expressive and support the words that you are speaking. They can enlarge for surprise or for happiness, or they might squint if you're somewhat suspicious, or if you're feeling disgusted, you can make certain eye movements that would support that as well. The other thing about the eyes is the importance of eye contact. When you are presenting, whether it's in a room of 4 or 14 or a large audience of 400 or 4,000, you want to make eye contact periodically with people within the room. Now, of course, if you're in a small room, ideally you'd make eye contact with every single individual who is participating in your presentation. And the best thing to do would be to make eye contact and hold it for a few seconds, approximately about 4 seconds. If you have a large room, then you certainly can't make eye contact with each individual, but you certainly want to have head movement from the right side to the left side, down the middle, and then of course to the back. And find an individual in which you still can have a specific eye contact to the right, to the left, and in the middle. This will engage your audience and really keep them listening to your message. The second thing in the facial area would be the intonation of the voice. It's very important to vary the tone of your voice so that if you have something that is really important and you want your audience to really understand, you might use an expansive sound in your voice and say, "This is really important." Or you might use a soft, gentle voice by saying, "You know what? This was just the right thing that we want to do." And a whisper can even be effective. So varying your voice level while you're speaking your words can have a significant impact. Now, the body stance is also important. You want to be relaxed and poised when you are standing. So we suggest that you stand with feet about hip distance apart. Relax your shoulders and roll them to the back. Keep your head looking forward and held high. All of this gives a stance of confidence. If you're not gesturing, then hold your arms and your hands restfully by your side. So we've talked about the eyes, we've talked about the stance, and now we'll talk about hand gestures. So what will we do with hand gestures? Well, first of all, again, as I mentioned earlier, those gestures which you do naturally ought to be the gestures that you bring to the presentation platform. Anything that doesn't feel right or is somewhat pretentious or stilted gives a disjointed or a presentation that doesn't have harmony. So do those gestures that you feel best about. Gestures can also be used to describe various things such as size, direction, or intensity. So for instance, if I were to tell you we have a product line that sells small products, medium, or large, then my hands would go out appropriately. Or if I want to give directions such as go to the right or to the left, head north or go south, then gestures would also support that very easily. Or if you want to speak with intensity such as this medication is the strongest medication that we have available. Or she was just as gentle as a lamb. So by giving intensity to your voice and to the actual gesture will support the message that you are trying to present. Finally, where should the gestures occur within your body? Somewhere in the upper trunk between the abdomen and the neck area. And when you are making gestures, make them full. Now you don't want to get fidgety and do small, tiny little gestures. So you want to make full gestures, but they're in this area. Otherwise, they become distracting. So let's see how gestures done effectively can work in a presentation. I am now going to read the Dash poem by Linda Ellis. I read of a man who stood to speak at the funeral of a friend. He referred to the dates on the tombstone from the beginning to the end. He noted that the first came at the date of her birth and spoke of the following date with tears. But he said what mattered most of all was the dash between those years. For that dash represents all the time that she spent alive on earth. And now only those who loved her know what that little line is worth. For it matters not how much we own, the cars, the home, the cash. What matters is how we live and love and how we spend our dash. So think about this long and hard. Are there things you'd like to change? For you never know how much time is left that can still be rearranged. If we could just slow down enough to consider what's true and real, and always try to understand the way other people feel, and be less quick to anger and show appreciation more, and love the people in our lives like we've never loved before. If we treat each other with respect and more often wear a smile, remembering this special dash might only last a little while. So when your eulogy is read with life actions to rehash, would you be proud of the things they say about how you spent your dash? Again, that's The Dash Poem by Linda Ellis. So let's recap what we've done today. How to properly use gestures while presenting. We asked and answered the following questions. What is a gesture? Why are gestures important? Who do you have to be to use gestures successfully? And how do you properly use gestures in your presentation? So I hope that you can see that gestures are very key. So I now ask you and encourage you to go out and use gestures in your presentation and become the best presenter that you can be. Thank you.